So Wayne and I spent a week out in Vegas during the WPT. This is the very first video of mine from being out there. A couple of things that you're going to notice. I mean, first of all, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. When I go on poker trips, I get up really early. I try to do a small session in the morning. I got up at 4 in the morning and managed to do a small session at the Wynn. And you're going to see a couple things different because it's the beginning of the trip and it's 4 in the morning. I play a little bit more closer to the chest, if you will, more pot control, a little bit more just trying to get my feet wet. Again, it's 4 in the morning in this video, from about 4 to 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not trying to get too gamble heavy with anybody. I'm just mainly trying to play pot control and trying to be a little cheeky. A lot of viewers and subscribers know that I am very aggressive, which is true. So every once in a while, it doesn't hurt to change gears and try check raising or check for pot control. That's something that you guys don't see very often of me. But also, we changed a few of the graphics. I think you guys will end up liking it. Please tell me what you guys think about the picture-in-picture frame where it shows the cards. I noticed that, like, Brad Owen, Andrew Nemi, I think Mariano is doing it as well. I think as well as Rampage, where they just take a picture of their whole cards and put it in the screen. So let me know if you guys like that over the video, over the other graphics. And yeah, if you do, hopefully I can do it on every single hand. I can't do it on every single hand in this one because I didn't know I was going to be doing that when I got back from Vegas. But in any case, this is basically day one of a 7-8 day long poker trip in Vegas. As you guys know, we have a meetup game coming up January 4th and 5th at the Rockford Charity Group down in Chicago. We also have some meetup games scheduled in Texas coming in February, and we're trying to sneak in a meetup game on the Strip Super Bowl weekend. So we're trying to work those deals out. Hopefully we can get that finalized. Hopefully by the time the next video comes up, you guys will see that we have that. But in any case, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, everybody. It really does help the channel. As always, I'll tag the merchandise down below in the description if you guys want to buy it, hat, hoodies, or card protectors. And if you see me out and about, feel free to come up and say hi to me, talk to me about strategy. There's a few people at the Wynn that were like, oh, that's the professor. And then they acted like I had the plague. I'm a very sociable guy. I really like to talk to people. And yeah, I love the gift of gab. So play smart, everybody. Run like a god. So here we're applying the button principle. There's a $30 raise pre-flop, total of 4 callers. I've got 10-9-7-3 with the 10-3 of spades. This is not a monster hand by any stretch of the imagination. I'm literally just playing it because I'm on the button. This is one of my first hands too, so I also want to show people that I'm good for the game. So that way, hopefully I can get paid off later on. So there's $120 in the pot. When the board comes 4-6 jack, basically, we just have a gutter ball. Everybody checks. People are going to play passive. I'm going to pounce on it. So I bet $75. The first 2 players fold. The third player is going in the tank. He thinks for a minute. At this point, he's not sure if he's calling. If he does call, I'm putting him on some kind of weak draw, maybe a weak pair like Jack Queen X, Jack Ace King, something to that effect. So I bet he calls. The turn comes an 8 of spades. This is favoring my range quite heavily as the button. So when he checks, I bet about half pot, $125. I do pick up a complete wrap here. I do pick up a 10-high flush draw. The only thing that's really going to call me here is maybe like Jack 9-10. And I'm blocking that because I do have a 9 and a 10 in my hand. When he folds, I show him that I was basically betting on a draw. So in this hand in particular, I'm going to show you guys what a possible leak that you might have when you're playing pot limit Omaha. I have 3-7 Queen King double suited. Not a good hand. I'm under the gun +1. First player ends up raising to 35 because it's a straddle. I call, and then when it gets back around to the small blind announces pot. Now, one of the things that you might notice when you're playing pot limit Omaha is when somebody just says pot and it's pre-flop, they usually have pocket aces, and this individual is out of position. So when you just simply announce pot, you're announcing to the world, hey, 2 of my cards everybody knows. Don't get me wrong, aces is a strong hand, but in a situation like this, when I know what 2 of your hole cards are, I've got a pretty good idea that you're either going to feel comfortable or uncomfortable with them. Now, because this individual is out of the small blind announcing pot, there's a situation where I can either fold or I can call. Now, because I don't have an ace in my hand, I'm actually more likely to call because of that. Now, if it does fold to me, I can get it heads up when I know my player's 2 hole cards are in there and see if I can squeeze some value for them. So again, if you're playing pot limit Omaha and you find yourself in peculiar positions where you end up losing money, this might be a situation where you are losing money. Out of position with aces, don't get me wrong, I'm probably going to raise, but I might not raise a full pot size bet. So let's see what happens. In this situation, the individual in between us decides to throw away his hand. You can see the small blind calling right there. And the original raiser gets out of the way. He probably has an ace in his hand. Now, the only reason why I do call is because I'm in position. I don't have aces. I don't have an ace in my hand. And I am double suited. So in this situation, when you're heads up, and you have pocket aces out of position, you really should just bet pot on the flop most of the time. The flop does come 9-6 jack. He checks out of position. I check as well. I've got a gutter ball. The turn gives me a club draw. Now I have 2 clubs, and he's got a decision to make. He checks. I check back. I'm just taking my free card. When the river pairs the board but puts a club up there like a 6, it's actually my most perfect card in this situation because now this is a situation in which I can probably milk aces. I can target aces here. Now that I know he has aces, now I'm actually going to go for 100% value. There's $350 in the pot. I don't want to bet a full-size pot bet on him because it'll scare him away. So instead I do a value bet for $150. Now he's looking at it. He goes, well, this looks like he might just be buying it. He's not really sure what to do. He's in a pickle. He calls. I turn over my hand and I announce that I have clubs. And he says, yeah, your clubs are good. And I said, well, I figured you had to call with aces. So if you're finding a leak in your game where you're losing with aces, this might be a perfect example for you to look over and review. So let's take a look at this hand. We have 4, 6, 6, 8, and we happen to have a suit. And I'm in middle position. There's a $15 raise pre-flop. We end up having quite a few callers. Let's just take a moment here. Everybody, the picture-in-picture is up at the top left, as you can see right here. This is something that I'm doing that's brand new. A lot of other vloggers are doing it. Please let me know in the comments if you guys like it. I think this is the way that we're going to go moving forward, but definitely let me know if you guys like the freeze frame picture-in-picture throughout the hand. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. The flop comes Ace-6-3 complete rainbow. So we flop a complete set. There's $75 in the pot. I'm just going to do a little bit of a value bet. I'm betting $35. Now this is a value bet. It's a feeler. It lets all the draws call. I'm okay with all the draws calling. Guy with a monster chip stack decides to raise me to $125. Now at this point in time, because he does have about $3,000 in front of him, it is 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I haven't seen him raise pre-flop with any hand. I'm thinking to myself, does this guy have like deuce 4 or 5? Or does he have a set of threes, or does he have a set of aces? At this particular point in time, I'm not sure, but I know that his range of hands are a set of aces, a set of threes, and deuce 4 or 5. Now, because he does have $3,000 in front of him when the max buy-in's $1,000, I can pretty much eliminate a set of threes out of his hand. So I'm thinking he's either got like a set of aces. He could have ace 3, or he could have deuce 4 5, or he could have ace 6, even though I have pocket sixes. So I double check my hand. Now I'm going to go ahead and call here. I'm not going to re-raise, because if I re-raise and he's got a set of threes, it's going to blow him off the pot. Or if he's got a draw, it might blow him off the pot. So I decide to flat here. I already know on the turn, especially when it comes a brick, like a jack of hearts, which is what it is, I know for a fact I'm going to call whatever bet he makes, or I'm going to check raise. In this situation, I know I'm going to check and call or check raise. Now, that really depends on his bet size. If I check and he bets like $150 to $200, I'm check potting it because it symbolizes that he's got some kind of wrap. If I check and he does a full-size pot bet, like $300 or somewhere around there, I'm going to call. I'm definitely not going to fold, but because it's so large, I'm probably not going to check raise. So let's see what he does here. I decide to check it over to him, and the guy leads out for almost a full-size pot bet, $300. I'm like, well, that makes my decision easy. I was going to check raise you, but this is a pretty big pot size bet here. I'm just going to flat. At this point, I'm flatting for two reasons. One, he could have a complete wrap. I want to make sure that the river bricks. Or he could have two pair like ace-6, ace-3. He could have turned a bigger two pair like ace-jack. Now, when the river comes a complete blank at this point in time, if I check and he's got a set of aces, I'm going to pay him off. This is going to be an unfortunate situation. But if I check and he has a complete wrap draw that is missed, it's going to give him an opportunity to bluff at the pot. I do have about $700 behind, so I go ahead and check it over to him, and he checks back. Now, at this point in time, I know I'm good. I show him a set of sixes. He turns over ace-6, and we end up scooping a decent-sized pot. But this is a good example of playing pot control out of position. So here's a situation in which pot control is going to be shown here, as well as trying to be sneaky. I looked down at ace, queen, 10, 3 with a suited ace. Now, the cutoff ended up raising $60 pre-flop, and we're going to go 5 ways to the flop. And so there's a total of $300 in the pot. Flop comes jack 3, 4, so we really don't flop much. I mean, we do flop bottom pair here, but in a situation like this, the jack is kind of my quote-unquote pivot card, if you will. It's needed for a straight. Now, when the turn comes a king of hearts, let's go ahead and pause this for a minute. I do have a complete wrap now to Broadway, but how many outs do I really have? I have 2 aces, 2 queens, 2 10s, and 3 9s. So I ended up only having about 9 outs, which means I have about 19% equity into this pot. So there's a total of $300 in the pot. I'm going to elect to check here. For pot control, I'm going to check call because somebody could be betting hearts here. Now, because the individual raiser did a full-size pot-size bet in the cutoff, I'm hoping he's got a set of kings here. So I go ahead and check. The cutoff obliges by betting $100. In this situation, it's a pretty easy call. Yes, I only have about 20% equity here, but I'm hoping he's got a set of kings, because if he does have a set of kings, I can end up check raising the river if I hit. If I miss, you know, all I did was waste $100. If he's got hearts, you know, and it bricks out where there's no heart, you know, I'm going to give up on the pot if he ends up betting on this. But in any case, I go ahead and call. We're going to go heads up to the river. Here I'm thinking he's the original raiser. He should have a set of kings. I actually river my gin card. I river the Stone Cold Nuts. So here I have Broadway. Now, most PLO players in this situation, especially in the low limit, are going to fire out and bet pot. Now, if you bet pot here, or even if you bet like $300 or even half pot here, it's really hard for a set of kings here to call. Instead, if you check, he's probably going to think his set of kings are good. And then you can check raise, and then he's going to find out the bad news. If he's got something like king jack, he still might bet. So in this situation, I think the best way to extract the most amount of money from my opponent is actually to check here. So I'm going to go ahead and check. He checks back. Unfortunately, he says he's got 2 pair. I show him I got the Stone Cold Nuts, and we're going to end up scooping this one, even though we tried to get the most amount of value out of it as we could. So in this particular hand, we actually have a double board bomb pot. And I'm not going to go over what the boards are. I'm using this hand just to foreshadow what my next couple of videos are going to be like, where I will go over the double board bomb pot and double board bomb pot strategy. As I mentioned, we played about 100 hours of double board bomb pot, so I have a pretty good idea on how to play these. So in this situation here, I have 9, 10, jack, queen. I actually have the Stone Cold Nuts on one board, and I have pretty much nothing on the other board. I'm in the cutoff. It checks to me. I bet the whopping $5. I bet minimum. Reason why, and I'll get into this later, is you want to apply the most amount of pressure on the turn and not on the flop. Now, when I bet $5, the button takes an insult to this. He decides to raise to $75. Now, the table has seen me bet $5 almost every single time on double board bomb pots. So we get one caller, then we get another caller. It gets back to me. We're basically going to go 4 ways to the turn. I have the absolute nuts on one board, and I think I have just a pair of 9s on the other. So I really don't have much to go with on the other board. I'm contemplating re-raising, but in this situation, I say, you know what? I'm just going to call, make sure that it bricks out on the bottom board, so that way I can apply max pressure. So we're going to go 4 ways to the flop. The pot actually has $460 in the pot. So on the top board, nothing changes, and on the bottom board, nothing changes. So I still have the stone cold nuts on one board with a straight, and on the other board, I have a pair. Now, this is a situation in which I know I'm going to apply maximum pressure. The guy who raised to $75 on the button is probably going to think, what the hell are you so excited about? Neither of those boards changed. But the reason why you want to apply max pressure on the turn instead of on the river is because players are only drawing to one card. So let's see what happens when the first player checks, second player checks. I double check my cards. Yep, still have the nuts, and I still have a pair of 9s. Now there is a spade draw out there on the board that has a pair of 9s. I go ahead and lead out for a full pot size bet. Button immediately mucks. Now this is a little bit of foreshadowing because my next couple of videos are going to cover double board bomb pots, and I'm putting everybody in what I call the pickle position, which is they're in the position to make the decision of what they want to do. So when it gets down to heads up, I already know I'm good. I don't care if this guy calls. I don't care if he folds. He ends up folding. I show him. I'm like, yeah, I had the nuts. So what if I only bet $5? I still had the nuts. So we end up scooping a nice double board bomb pot bet here by applying maximum pressure on the turn. So a quick little session here. Ended up playing the 125 PLO at the Wynn. Got there at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, so just a short session before the horse tournament. Ended up being in for $1,500, out for $2,500 and change. So we win $1,000. That was pretty straightforward stuff. Not too many big pots. I think there's 2 pots that were close to $1,000, and that was about it. And I happened to win both, so that's always good. All right, play smart, run like a god, everybody.